Hey, good morning and welcome to the Stochastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Good for the first time in a long time, I can say, hey guys, good game. Good game. Should be a good. Seriously, when's the last time we've been able to say this? I can't remember. I mean, last Thursday we had Bears, Panthers. What do we have this Monday? Oh yeah, Broncos, Bills. That was fine, but I mean, it was an ugly game. Really ugly game. But now we got Bengals-Ravens, 3.5-point spread. Both of these teams coming off, I don't want to say devastating losses, but pretty rough losses. Bengals had a big lead. Deshaun Watson with 14 broken bones leads them back in the second half. Pick six as well. They win. And Joe Burrow and the Bengals, I didn't see that coming. Taking the L to C.J. Stroud, the young phenom in Houston. Another game-winning drive. So huge game in a really competitive AFC North divisional spot. This should be fun, Matt. For the first time in what feels like forever, we've got a good one to break down.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for the game tonight. And you're right. It should be absolutely awesome on paper. Sometimes these let down, but I'm hoping we get Lamar bounce backs, skill position players we actually want to get to. I don't hate pricing today. I think it's very efficiently priced slate, giving us a ton of options. So everything's setting up for maybe this being one of the best showdown, at least slates of the year.
I'm looking forward to it. You're right. Sometimes these do let down. I'd say the one good thing is that AFC North matchups usually live up to the hype. Even if it's a defensive battle, they usually live up to the hype and turn into pretty good games. So we'll see how this one plays out, but we're happy to have you guys with us as always. Take one single second here. Atone for your sins on a Thursday morning. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. All of that stuff goes a very long way for us. We appreciate you for also, hey, if you're listening after the fact, leave a comment down below. Give us your thoughts. Try and at the very least read all of those. And last thing, all of our stuff is in podcast form as well. You can go on the Apple Podcast. You can go to Spotify, wherever it is you listen. And anything that we have outside of Live Before Lock, which has no shelf life, can be found there, including all of our podcast exclusive content. Ben and I knocked one out on Tuesday. It's a great one, breaking down the top week 10 winners, looking at single entry 3-max strategy, going over all the tools, setting you guys up and giving you good insight for the weeks going forward. So make sure to check that out. It's 30 minutes long. We're in, we're out. Won't take up a lot of your day. All right. Well, let's get into it. We've got the Bengals. We've got the Ravens. Bengals getting 3.5 points on the road. Matt, I'll ask you the first thing out of the gate. 46-point total, too. Do you have any read on how this game plays out? Like, are you playing this a specific way, or is this one that you consider or would project to be a close-fought affair, and you're kind of sticking close to where the spread's at 3.5, right around the field goal?
I'm sticking closer to the spread, but if I thought this got out of hand in one way or the other, I think it could be on the Baltimore side, Baltimore winning by a larger margin than the 3.5 points, which seems to be opposite of the market because Cincinnati's taken a lot of money. But I really respect this Ravens defense. I think the offense is high-powered, has multiple ways to win. And I think there's enough cracks with the Cincinnati defense where if I was building alternate lineups, it would be stuff where Ravens maybe win by 7, stuff like that. So that's my read. What's your read on the game?
Similar. I could see this game coming down to the final drive and a field goal from Tucker, right? Like I could absolutely see that being the case. You know why? Because both of these teams are there's a lot of parity in the NFL. We know that. It's a weird sport. And, week over week, the team that's a lot better doesn't always win. But you've got the Bengals coming off a tough loss. Like, Joe Burrow was beat up over that loss. That's a bad loss. When you start off the season, what were they, like 1-3 to start the season or something? When you start off the season like that, you need to you can't relinquish those opportunities to get those type of wins at home. That's a big loss. But then Baltimore last week had what, a 17-point lead or something. They end up losing that game outright to an injured Deshaun Watson, who's no longer playing this season. So both of these teams, ton to play for, divisional spot. I'm with you, though, that if I were to see this game maybe get out of hand, it would probably lean more towards Baltimore. There's no T. Higgins for Cincinnati. Joe Burrow, has looked really good, really bad, and then really good, and then okay. I don't know. Well, I will say this much though: Ronnie Stanley's out for the Baltimore Ravens. That doesn't help, and Marlon Humphrey's not expected to play, so they have a couple key injuries on that team as well.
Yeah, they do, and they're at a position I think of just extreme importance on the offensive line, mainly when you talk about Lamar running, Keaton Mitchell, Gus Edwards, and the dynamic running attack that Baltimore's played through. Not to mention Cincinnati's D-line is pretty strong. They have an injury there themselves in Sam Hubbard. He's out of this game. So maybe things equal out a little bit here, but I think that's a matchup that could decide it on both sides, the D-line, O-line mismatches or potential for them.
What do you make of, this is just us setting the table here for you guys before we get into the individual spots, just to get an idea of, kind of lay the foundation. But what do you make of this Bengals run defense? Because at times they look fine, and at other times they look like they couldn't stop you in the backfield. 188 rushing yards allowed last week. And let's not overlook the matchup. They were going up against Devin Singletary, who's been a ghost all season long. It's really weird. They've had some spots where they've been able to really clamp down on rushing attacks. They allowed nothing to Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet in week 6. They mostly held San Francisco. They neutered that good rushing attack. Buffalo didn't do much. But then teams like Arizona, Tennessee, Baltimore, 178 rushing yards. Cleveland in week 1, 206. They've been all over the map when it comes to being able to contain the run.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you're just going to see this defense, especially against like the good offenses. I think that's some of the reason. I mean, you could have a middling defense stand up against some of the bad rushing attacks and then play decently well, I guess, against decent ones and then get clobbered by some of the good ones. But the Devin Singletary thing is weird for me because he plays on such an explosive offense with CJ Stroud. It's like those receivers spread you out. That could open things for Devin Singletary himself, who the previous week faced a very difficult run defense. So I think a lot of people just sold him short. Not that he's some explosive player by any means. But all this to say, I think Vegas tells you exactly what you need to know about this run defense. You can derive just almost strict rushing yard projections from the spread, from the total, and it's close. So I don't think this is anything we should be really reading too much into. It's already in the projections, and we can just go from there.
And also, if you're paying for Baltimore running backs, you're not exactly getting a discount this week.
You're not getting a discount, and that's going to be a really fun talking point. Excited to see what the chat has to say about Keaton Mitchell, who's priced up, given a 3-carry game and about 20% of the snaps. Should be fun. And
no passing work.
No passing work. Still going to Justice Hill. Gus Edwards, almost like career high in routes last game, or I guess a season high. Gus Edwards ran a ton of routes last week.
How many?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I was working on projections yesterday, and I was just dumb. Like, it was almost eye-opening to see it. I was like, what in the world? I can pull it up for you right now.
I got it.
You got it? What was it?
If you have it, go for it. I was just pulling it up.
Yeah, it's only 11 routes, but I mean, that's like 35%.
Yeah, for Gus Edwards, that's a lot, right?
That's a ton. He'd been like below 20 in almost every game.
Yeah. Keaton Mitchell ran, 5 routes in that game?
Keaton Mitchell was 7.
Oh, did he run 7? Okay.
I mean, splitting hairs. What is the difference?
Yeah. We're probably just looking at different, But
yeah, it's also how some of this stuff is charted. Like, there's noise in there.
Anyway, ready to talk about it? Get into these plays?
Yeah, I think so.
St. Stephen said he could see you getting 3 yards per carry.
Me?
Yeah.
That's awfully generous, Steven. Maybe in my prime, I'm far from it.
How tall are you? Were you 5'11"?
I'm 6 feet.
You're 6 foot and you weigh what, like 210?
I'm probably like 225. I'm a thick boy.
Are you 225? You might be all right.
Yeah, dude. I weighed myself this summer and I saw 225 on the scale. I was horrified.
I thought that, don't you want to be? Isn't that your goal?
225? What do you mean?
I mean, you're constantly in the gym.
I am constantly in the gym, but that doesn't mean I'm not thick.
All right, it's time for a cut then. Time for one can of tuna, cut down the turkey.
Something's got to change, man. Cut down the beers.
What's that? Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, well, if on a Friday you're crushing a case, even if it's light beer, that'll get you there.
I've been doing a good job. I have been cutting out the beers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
entirely.
Not entirely. Last weekend was my birthday, so I didn't.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thanks, buddy. Definitely didn't cut out the beers that weekend. But prior to that, I'd done an awesome job.
Nice, man. That's good stuff. I tried a sober October.
How did it go?
I said I tried a sober October. But here's the thing. This is pretty good. I think I drank like 12 beers all month and didn't drink a single sip of liquor. To me, that's a massive win. No,
Yeah, that's
nothing
awesome.
else.
That's really
That's
good.
not bad, right?
Yeah, you did fantastic.
Yeah, it's close to like one beer every 3 days. So I consider that a win. But as far as like full out, yeah, it wasn't. I sit down to watch some football on Sunday, give myself a little treat. Anyway, how old are you now, by the way? What are you, like 29?
I just turned 30.
30. Ah, the big 3-0. All right. All right, good stuff. Well, let's talk about this game. Before we do, though, guys, shout out to our sponsor, Vivid Picks. We've talked. I think Matt and I have talked about this a few times, but when you're looking at all of these pick'em sites, right? You know what they are, like the pick'em DFS sites, Prize Picks, Underdog, all of those. There's one very similar thing in common. They all have sign-up bonuses, and they all do a lot of free squares. The sign-up bonuses for all of these others are generally $100 first match deposit bonus. So you put 100 in, you get another 100. Your account now says 200. You put 50 in, you now have 100, right? 20, you now have 40. At Vivid right now, only through us, only through the link in the description and chat. Not if you go there. It's only exclusively through us. It's a first match deposit bonus of $300. That is massive, especially considering they're just matching it, right? Like you go from 300 to 600 immediately. And they also have free squares that they do there, just like anywhere else. You're just building lineups with the over or unders, the higher or lowers on these player projections, on these numbers. Joe Burrow passing props, Jamar Chase receiving yards, all of that stuff. For main slates, for showdowns, for basketball, for any sport out there right now that you're looking to get into. And there's two very distinct ways to approach something like this. Matt, you could probably expand. One, if you're getting an opportunity to get $300 matched and immediately double that on 100% deposit match bonus, you probably want to reallocate some of the funds you have on DraftKings or Prize Picks or Underdog or anywhere. Two, though, just like if you're a sports bettor and you're in a legal sports betting state, you never just want to be on one book. You want to be on as many books as possible because you always want to be, number one, getting all of the sign-up bonuses, right? And just expanding your bankroll out of the gate. But you also 100% of the time want to make sure you're getting the best odds on every bet you place. I view it through the exact same lens when it comes to these pick'em DFS sites as I do with sports books.
Yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but still like breaking it down for people and reminding, even if it's just laziness, like go out, get your free money. It's huge to you at the end of the year. You can place extra wagers, increase your unit size, whatever it is that you want to do that allows you to do it. And then you mentioned line shopping. I live in an illegal state. I have access to one book. I can't tell you how many times where it's personally bitten me. And I bet a ton of college football where I get a line that's not like there's a better line on the legal book somewhere, but I can't get it. And then I end up losing or pushing. It's happened to me like at least a dozen times this year in one sport. Same thing with pick'em sites. I mean, having the opportunity to play the best line across them, it's a no-brainer, man. Like it really is just a no-brainer.
So check it out. Vivid Picks. If you haven't been there yet, it's just like any of these others, except you're adding one more to the arsenal to make sure you're always getting the best plays and the best bonuses. Link in the description and in chat. Only way to get up to $300 first match deposit bonus. All right, let's talk Bengals here. No T. Higgins today. This is a big one. He was out last week. We saw Irwin with that early long touchdown. Was only targeted 4 times, but he was out there 81% of the time, which is very significant. They went essentially with 3 receivers outside of Iosivas. Iosivas, I believe that's how it's pronounced, right? Iosivas.
I've always called him Iosivas, but I truly don't know.
Iosivas. All right, I'm pretty close. But for the most part, 3 receivers. It was Chase playing 84%, Boyd out there for 92% of snaps, Trent Irwin playing 81% of snaps. Those guys soaked up the large majority of snaps in that game against Houston. And then sure, like we said, or like you said, Iosivas, either way, you know who I'm talking about. Iosivas. He was out there for 28%. We'll get into the tight ends in a second because that was all over the map. Essentially, every tight end got a third of the snaps. But starting it off with receivers here, and we can clearly tie Joe Burrow into the mix with all of this. How do you prioritize? Jamar Chase is clearly the priority. Marlon Humphrey being doubtful is definitely nice if you're talking about pass catchers in this offense. But to me, I think you could make a good argument for any of these receivers today.
I'm right there with you. I think Jamar's pretty self-explanatory. I personally prefer him in the flex. I think a lot of people are just going to end up clicking him into captain because you have value and it's pretty easy to get to. It's like value we feel pretty consistent about. But I think the other Cincinnati pass catchers are all so underpriced that I'm liking Trenton Irwin. I'm liking Tyler Boyd in the captain spot. One, they're not owned in that position, but you're also giving yourself an avenue to getting an extra stud in your lineup. And it's not like we're playing the normal Tyler Boyd or Trenton Irwin role right now. The target shares for both should increase. Jamar should as well. But it's with Boyd and Trent Irwin where you're actually getting a price discount and giving yourself access to a different lineup point. I still think you can build positive EV lineups with Jamar in the captain. I just think you have to worry about duplication a little more. So if you're doing that, just make sure you have some sort of contrarian piece. But as far as contrarian captains go, I like Boyd and I like Trent Irwin a lot here, especially Boyd, man. He's one of the most positively leveraged players on the slate for us, which I tend to agree with. I love anytime this confirms my own biases. I was building lineups this morning and last night, doing a lot of Tyler Boyd captain and then seeing him as the highest positive leverage player. That was something you really like to see.
I was saying that the other day too. It's nice when it confirms you're already, pretty firm biases. But Boyd 12 target game last time out. Now, big drop for Tyler Boyd too. But I will say there's no way that Jamar Chase was 100% in that game. There's just no way because first of all, he wasn't even getting targeted early on in that one, right? You have to think that another week removed from this sore back, that Jamar Chase is going to be back in action and not limited whatsoever. I don't think there was even any injury designation for him throughout this week leading up to a short week game on Thursday. My guess is that you give him a few more days. We haven't heard anything unless you have. I think no news is good news when it comes to Jamar Chase and the back getting better day over day.
100% agree. And it's not do I want to play Jamar Chase? It's more, where do we play him? How do we play this optimally? For small fields, cash games, stuff like that, a ton more interest in the captain spot. In larger field stuff, I think he makes a little more sense in the flex, and that's solely just a leverage situation. But I agree with you, along with Tyler Boyd and Trent Irwin seeing more targets, they're going to look Jamar Chase's way a ton. We've seen this in the past when T. Higgins has been out. You could walk into like a 15-target game, and I wouldn't bat an eye at that.
Yeah, only 6 targets last game. That seems unsustainable with T. Higgins out. I just think he wasn't 100%. It's funny, too, that he's just so good that it didn't matter. Like he still had a 64-yard touchdown. He's still so good that even at less than 100% and semi-hobbled, we saw a great performance from him there. You know what I was wondering, though, is if you're looking at – okay, so here's my thinking. Iosivas, what if he probably takes the biggest hit in a game like this if Chase gets back to the 95% of snaps that we could see him play. Like, they're not going away from Boyd. They're likely
He's
not
been
going
injured.
away.
Is he going to play today?
Who? Iosivas?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is he out? Oh, he's out. He's out. Okay.
All I know is he's out. Okay. I saw him get hurt in the last game,
right.
and it didn't look good.
Good call. I missed that.
Same. I just saw it on Red Zone.
Okay, well then, yeah, no, you're good call. What happened to him?
I just saw him go down with a knee injury, and then he didn't come back, and it didn't look great when it happened. But it seems like he avoided something really serious. He's not on like IR or something.
Yeah, well, good call. Thank you for that. I missed it. But okay, because what I was going to say is that he would take a hit if Jamar Chase goes from 84% of snaps to 96% of snaps, which we had seen earlier in the season. So what does it look like now that he's out? You have Chase, Boyd, and Irwin. These guys legitimately might all play like 95% of snaps in this game.
I think that's likely unless we see an injury. The only other receiver outside of Josephus who's out was Stanley Morgan, and he only got 4 snaps, and he's been on their team for a long time. He's basically like a special team practice squad caliber player. Even during injuries, previously, he hasn't seen a large share of the routes. So I think it honestly would take another injury for him to get on the field more. And you know what? Say Trent Irwin goes down or something, they just might use like Irv Smith or Tanner Hudson as a third receiver because those are receiving move tight ends. I don't know for sure that it's Stanley Morgan. So I'm with you. I think it's almost like 90+% of snaps for all 3 of the main Cincinnati pass catchers. And I still don't think I have interest in Stanley Morgan, even with Josephus being out.
I don't either, but I do have interest. I'll say this much. The pass catchers for Baltimore, you know, they like to run the football. Baltimore has a much easier time running the football than the Bengals. What do you like just in overall? I'm not asking you like specifics, individual guys, but just as a unit, what do you like more, the pass catchers for the Ravens or for the Bengals today?
I like the pass catchers for the Bengals more.
Me too.
I mean, pricing's not expensive, and then it's super consolidated, which isn't the case with Baltimore. And I see some people in the chat bringing up Charlie Jones, the rookie out of Purdue. He'll be active tonight, I'm guessing, but he's also a special teamer. So I don't know how many offensive snaps he gets. He's already been behind like Stanley Morgan and Josephus and Irwin, so I don't think that's a positive. But yeah, he's at least if you're playing like Millie Maker size fields, hundreds of thousands of fields, that's where Stanley Morgan and Charlie Jones become interesting. But I don't think we see a lot of snaps for either.
Yeah, I suppose he could play like, I don't know, 10, maybe 15% of snaps. I just keep going back to the assumption that it's going to be Irwin, Boyd, and Chase getting all of the snaps. Not like literally every snap, but all playing 90+%. That seems likely here.
Yeah, I think so. They've already been doing that.
Right. And I think the only reason Chase didn't last week is because they had to get him off the field a little bit because he was still in some pain. It was reported that he was still in some pain.
Yeah, man. He was I think a true game time decision.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, it's basically 3 receivers here. But so the tight end position just gets way uglier because you have Drew Sample, Tanner Hudson, Irv Smith. Is there any clear distinguishing factor here between the 3 of these guys? And I will say in the flex spot, Irv Smith is $3,000, Tanner Hudson's 26, and Drew Sample is the dead min at or not the dead min. He's $400. He was targeted 3 times last game, but Tanner Hudson was the guy that early on in that was just peppered with targets, low quality targets, but still he had 6 targets. It felt like in the first, 20 minutes of that game, finished 6 for 7 with 33 yards. He was pretty heavily involved.
Yeah, honestly, the biggest surprise to me was seeing Drew Sample with 12 routes and the targets he received. Because you have 2 like bona fide receiving tight ends in Tanner Hudson and Irv Smith. And Drew Sample profiles as more of a blocker, at least to this point in his career. But Hudson led the team in routes. This guy's had really productive preseasons. He just hasn't gotten a strong opportunity in the regular season to this point. But he had 0 snaps blocking. Like he is out there to be a receiving tight end. For reference, you look at like even run blocking. Irv Smith had 6 run blocking snaps. Tanner Hudson had 0. So he is a little bit cheaper than Irv Smith, but when he's out there, you know exactly what he's doing. So I think to rank these guys, it's Tanner Hudson 1. I still would rank Irv Smith 2 because he's also a receiving tight end and he's out there a little bit more than Hudson. So, in situations where you're designing a run play and you need to check to a pass, Irv should be the main beneficiary. I don't really buy that Drew Sample's routes are sticky. I think this guy's basically a 6th offensive lineman. So that's how I would rank them. Tanner Hudson 1, price adjusted. Irv Smith 2, Drew Sample 3.
Man, it's tough though. I think I'd go Drew Sample 2 personally. But here's the only reason. He's a lot cheaper. He has 7 targets over his last 2 games. Irv Smith over his last 2 games has how many? 5. Let me just pull up routes from the last 2 weeks, because last week it was 17 routes for Hudson, 15 for Irv Smith. We might be looking at someone that classifies them differently, but we're going to be in the same ballpark as each other. Hudson 17, Smith 15, Sample 12. Over the last 2 weeks, Hudson's at 30, Smith is at 37, Sample's at 7. Okay, so Sample essentially, is that right, dude? Is that possible that in week 9 he ran? Is that possible that Sample ran 5 routes and was targeted 4 times?
That's a wild target per route rate. It's not impossible, but it's
80%.
It would be wild. No,
that's what it shows. That's what PFF shows right now on routes. It shows 3 receptions on 4 targets and 5 routes. What's weird though is that Irv Smith ran 22 routes in week 9 and then went down to 15 in week 10 with 1 target. Do they just not like him?
I think it's noisy. Like, we're small samples here. We have a pretty large sample of Drew Sample being just pure trash.
We don't have any sample of Irv Smith being any good either. I know he's hurt. I always thought he was going to be good in Minnesota.
Same.
I really did.
Yeah, I don't know. All this honestly leads me back to Tanner Hudson, who's seeing his routes and snaps rise, and he's the kind of tight end that does specifically what we want him to for DFS, which is just be out there and run routes. So
Hudson's got to be the number 1 among these 3 today.
And honestly, maybe the approach is just don't play Drew Sample or Irv Smith and just focus your attention on Hudson, because these guys all stink.
Sure.
And there's other value.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to take a quick look at red zone targets here for the last 2 weeks among these guys. See if anything stands out. Because we know on that primetime game, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Against the Bills? They were looking tight ends quite a bit. All right, so I got it right here. Red zone targets. No, I don't. I screwed it up, Matt. Okay, now I got it. Red zone targets for Cincinnati in weeks 9 and 10. 2 for Boyd, 2 for Chase, 2 for Higgins, 3 for Irv Smith. Okay, so he is getting, because he did have that 1 touchdown too. He is getting looks in the red zone, 2 inside the 10 over his last 2 games. Yes, I know it's a small sample, 100% understood. But I do wonder, like, is Irv Smith just going to be used more as a inside the 20s type of guy? It's entirely possible, considering 3 of his 5 targets have come in the red zone.
Yeah, you said it at the beginning of that. I just don't know how sticky it is. But I mean, if you're breaking ties, these are great stats to look at, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, my approach with Cincinnati tight ends is probably just coming in underweight to them all. Think they're large field tournament plays. But honestly, just try to find the salary to get yourself to Irwin, where you have a lot more safety than these guys. Or there's some Baltimore cheapies you could get to. Yeah, it's a very difficult situation to parse. It seems volatile week in, week out. The routes are changing. Snap shares are changing. And then some of these things, like the 4 targets on 5 routes, like that can't possibly be sticky. It's just not the way statistics work.
No, but I do think there might be a little stickiness with Tanner Hudson, to go back to your original point. I think there might be a little bit of stickiness here with Tanner Hudson. We've seen back-to-back games now where he's been legitimately involved, and he's running enough routes to where, you know, targets per route run is high enough. He would be, yeah, I'm with you. He would be my number 1 here. I don't know what the ceiling looks like on a guy such as Hudson, but he's cheap enough. He's getting high likelihood that he's going to actually catch these targets. I don't hate it.
Yeah, I don't hate it either. Large field play.
Maybe I would shift back to where you were saying and go Smith too. I know it's such a small sample, but I'm not writing off 3 red zone targets in 2 games either. Like, if he's out there in the red zone and these other guys aren't, that's intriguing enough to me in a large field tournament to use that as a tiebreaker. Anyway, what are you doing with the run? Dude, Joe Mixon, every week, it's like, hey, this isn't a bad spot for Mixon. Mixon's on the field a lot. Mixon's getting opportunities. what a dreadful season we've seen, man. And I really came into this going, they're going to run this guy until the wheels fall off. Why not? Right? He took a pay cut. He's on for one more year. Why not just run him till the wheels fall off? And the funny thing is, they're trying to. Like that's kind of what they want to do. But early in the season, you couldn't because they had to abandon the run in every game because Joe Burrow couldn't get anything going and they'd fall behind. And now, playing from behind against Houston, you see his opportunities limited. I don't know. And another thing, they can't get anything going on the ground at all. So then they have to kind of naturally abandon the run game because you can't just survive rushing for 2.5 yards per attempt. It's a showdown slate, though. I don't know what to do with him. It's not like Baltimore some pushover on the ground when it comes to the run defense.
Yeah, you mentioned enough concerns where I would rather be overweight to the Cincinnati pass catchers.
Me too.
As far as Mixon goes, man, yeah, I kind of feel bad. He's been playing behind a terrible offensive line his whole career. It's gotten a little better, but it's still not one of the elite offensive lines in football. They create no push and their run blocking metrics are poor. But I still think you can play him in tournaments because of the volume. Like all he really has to do is fall into the end zone. And then his volume is good enough to propel you there. He has a good pass catching role. So the floor is actually pretty good with Mixon. He's going to be a contrarian play. He's definitely negatively leveraged in our tools. So this would have to be a pretty large field option. And I think that's just because the players in his price range project so much better. The Burrows go up a little bit. You've got Jamar Chase. Of course, Lamar Jackson's on the other side. So like every single one of those players is going to have a better projection than Mixon. But ultimately, he's not a guy I can fade because of that volume. And then you fall in the end zone once, you're looking pretty solid. But yeah, it's exactly that. Prefer the other studs, but definitely not going to X out Mixon by any means.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a question from Leander. What are the new tools on the Sims? Yeah, we just did some massive improvements to this, big enhancements. Now, Matt, you can adjust player projections without using a template, without using custom projections. You can just plus or minus guys and projections. You can manually type in your own projections, or you can just use the regular projections, which is awesome. There's a contest archetype slider. You're going to like this as well. So now you can slide it more towards like high stakes and then get pools with concentrated exposure on like top point per dollar players, or slide it more towards lower stakes, spread out your ownership, spread out exposures. There's a marquee setting, which is just going to mirror large field GPPs. Swappable lineup profile. Here you go. Within the late swap tool, you can now, this is for basketball, you can now customize your swappable lineup profile. Slide to the left for more contrarian lineups, minimizing ownership, or to the right for more chalky lineups, maximizing projections. Man, when you think this tool can't get any better, a couple days after someone takes down $1 million with the Sims tool, someone takes on the same day, which is like the hardest contest to win, the play action, the 20 max, $3, takes down 100K. We had another sub with the Sims tool take down 10K. So $1 million, 100K. Oh, by the way, the guy that took down $1 million, I realized, also won the SPY and had 100K win there. I didn't even know that until Tuesday. Just when you think we can't make any more enhancements, Matt, we go ahead and do something like this. I mean, just keeps getting better, brother.
Yeah, I've been having a blast using them. It's improved my play quite a bit, and looking forward to checking out these new enhancements we've got this week and throughout the rest of the year. Love the little high stakes feature there too. If you're playing some higher dollar, smaller field stuff, that looks like it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, we'll run the Sims in a little bit before we get out of here for sure. Yeah, the Sims tool, absolutely. You and I talked about it. We screwed ourselves this week.
Yeah, that was not the Sims. That was just user error, me being a dummy.
It was the Sims because I negatively boosted some of the best spots.
Well, the Sims gave you him, and then
I know.
And then I was an idiot and I was like, Dak sucks. I'm not doing this. I'm not playing Dak.
Dude went and won $1 million with the lineups from the Sims, 100K. By the way, to commemorate that, guys, 20% off our Sims tools. Whether you want to do NBA or you want to do the NFL Sims Max package, Sims data package, 20% off all of it for a week or for the entirety of the month. Massive deal. We rarely ever discount these tools. You can see why after what happened last week. Greg took down 100K 2 weeks ago with the NBA Sims tool. 20% off. Links in the description and chat for all of them. Whether you want to do by the way, when you get the Sims packages for either sport, you don't need add-ons. You don't need an optimizer. Every tool that we have in its entirety on the site, you get not just the contest generator, not just the Sims tool, but ownership, the top single game plays tool for Showdown, single game, top stacks tool, boom bust tool, everything across the board, premium Discord, lineup generator. It's all included, 20% off. Legitimately the best time you're going to get in is right now if you want to get in and chase that millie, baby. Maybe it'll be one of us these days, Matt. Maybe it'll be you or me taking down the 6-figure, the 7-figure spot. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, man, I've been chasing the millie all year. Have not got there.
Well, it's coming, bro. Anyway, so just to round out the Bengals, I think we've comprehensively covered the Bengals, which is very necessary on a slate like today, especially without Higgins. How do you close out the backfield? Are there any backfield spots you want to be overweight on for the Bengals? Or are there any spots that you want to have exposure to that seem to be under-owned?
I don't think so. You're not really getting much of a discount on the backup Bengals. Trevion Williams, I guess at the stone min is where I would look. He out-snapped and route rated Chris Evans. If there's an injury or something, he's the stone minimum, so you could sprinkle him into lineups. But, if Mixon plays his normal full snap share, he might finish with like somewhere in the 1 to 3 touch range, which is still not going to get you there even at 200. So he's still a tournament play for me, and he's the preferred one over Chris Evans, but nothing that I'm super excited about.
As far as captains go, who are your favorite captains for the Bengals right now?
Right now, my favorite is Boyd, and then I still think I would have to go Jamar Chase second.
Okay. I think Chase would be my number one and then Boyd second. Only reason I put Chase number one, and this is honestly, this is what you would call a brain play, Matt. No, but this is just this is a thought that I've had. The only reason I put Chase one is because I find it unlikely that, assuming he's been good all week leading up to this game, after that week 10 game, if there's no limitations placed on him anymore, I have a tough time believing that this is not another double-digit target game and not a 6-target game like we saw in week 10.
Yeah, I have no pushback on that. I think he's live for 15 targets.
Yeah, you would hope. All right, ready to talk Bengals or Ravens here?
I'm ready to talk Ravens.
Oh, and for what it's worth, I'll just get this out of the way now. I know this is a 46-point total. It's also an AFC North battle. These games can be super, super weird, right? They can be very weird. They can be super defensively focused, low-scoring games. We saw one earlier in the week one. What was it? 24-27. That's a high-scoring game for Bengals and Ravens. You don't see that all the time. If this ended up being like a 17-14, I would be surprised, sure. But if it ends up being like a 20-17 or 20-16, where there's just a ton of field goals, Justin Tucker, McPherson, I know we're not talking about captaining these guys, but I'm not shying away from getting kicker exposure on either sides. I know you hate the kickers, but I definitely think in an AFC North game, they're always live to be optimal.
I don't hate kickers. I only hate them in the captain spot.
Right, I know.
I actually like them a lot for flex because they offer you solid, reliable pivots off some of the guys that are pretty dusty in this range. I think the value is a little stronger today, especially compared to like Monday's value. But yeah, kicker and defense always pretty good looks in this range, and I prefer kickers to defenses.
The only problem with Justin Tucker is you're paying a damn mid-range running back price tag on this guy every time.
Yeah, guy's a stud. It works to his detriment in this case, where you can get other value that's a little more reliable at a better price tag.
It is insane that he has a 19 fantasy point game this season.
He's a wagon, man. It's wild.
I love you referring to a kicker as a wagon. That is ridiculous. What a wagon. All right. Let's talk about the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, top play probability, 32%. That may seem high, but the funny thing is, you and I have been doing this show for a long time. We've seen weeks where he's at like 65% top play probability. I'm referring to our top single game plays tool, by the way, where you have ownership, a captain, utility. You have the top play probability, so the likelihood that they're the overall play. captain optimal probability, utility optimal, and then the leverage score. The only thing with Lamar Jackson right now is the fact that he has literally been boxed out by his own running backs lately, and in some instances by his own defense. You want to talk about non-stickiness, though? I actually think this is one of the least sticky things I could look at, where I'm going, oh man, it's hard to like Lamar Jackson because the running backs have been getting there. Like, okay, is Keaton Mitchell going to have a 40-yard rushing touchdown every time? Is Gus Edwards literally going to vulture 2 goal line touchdowns every game? I just have a extremely tough time believing that that's here to stay. Lamar Jackson is an absolute stud from a fantasy perspective. I think you see him get back to some of these big games sooner than later. And the last 3 weeks to me are a little bit misleading, because while the games did take that direction, it doesn't mean that this team is just saying, well, no, we don't want Lamar Jackson to throw any touchdowns, and we definitely don't want him to score any touchdowns with his feet. It's all Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell. It just seems like variance in a football season with a small sample size.
You laid it out well. One of the most variant stats you can look at is touchdown rate for quarterbacks.
Exactly.
Russell Wilson's the exact opposite. The guy has like one of the worst opportunity metrics in the league, but he's got something like 19 touchdowns already this year. He had like a game where
You know why? Because Cortland Sutton is a goat in the end zone, dude.
I love Cortland Sutton. He's a wagon.
That catch with all of his momentum going out of bounds. Did you see the catch on Monday night?
Yeah, he got his toes down.
How?
I don't know. He's awesome. I love Cortland Sutton.
Me too. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson is the exact opposite touchdown rate as a guy like Russell Wilson. And there's been a lot of noise in these games. Baltimore's absolutely slaughtered a couple of their most recent teams, their opponents, I should say. And when the going gets tough, like, they're going to use him more on the ground. They've had the luxury, honestly, of just crushing teams and falling back on Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell of late. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. Honestly, if anything, you're getting a discounted ownership on him. I'm going to play more Lamar Jackson because of that. He has multiple ways to win, unlike Joe Burrow, who I like as well. But Lamar Jackson can get there in so many different ways. Man, I mean, we're getting a pretty good price on him. He's not even the most expensive guy on the slate. I like him in both the captain and the flex spot. He's definitely my preferred Raven with the timeshares we have at running back and receiver. And I guess you can include tight end in that. I think he's the most secure Raven with the highest ceiling. So I'm going to end up playing this guy.
Me too. Colin said, I read something the other day that said the under is hit in primetime games this year at a 68% clip. 77, dude. 77. Yeah. The under is 24-7 in primetime games. In 31 primetime games, it's 24-7, Matt. 77%.
What's the under overall?
64%.
Yeah.
I think
that makes sense.
Incredible stuff. Really outrageous.
Scoring epidemic.
But it's bad, man. It's bad. Yeah, this is one of those games where it's like I would lean under just because super short week for both of these teams, Thursday night football. But I wouldn't be shocked if points are put up. They're still good offenses. So we'll see. I like the under a lot more last game between Denver and Buffalo. All right. How much do you think you're getting to guys like Jackson at the captain spot? Because the funny thing is, on a slate like this, it's still very doable. You and I are going to build a lineup before we get out of here. And of course, NBA strategy show with Josh and Adam coming up next. But the price points on some of these pass catchers for the Bengals is going to make it pretty feasible to do so.
Yeah, I definitely want Lamar in the captain. To your point, it's not difficult to do so. You have to make a couple concessions here and there, but I built lineups this morning. Plenty of them had Lamar. I didn't feel like I was making too many sacrifices. I think those lineups are well composed, completely live. I'll definitely be using him in the captain spot. He'll be one of my most owned captains. I imagine he'll be in the top 3, probably Jamar, maybe Boyd, and Lamar being the top 3.
I just built a lineup with Lamar at captain that also has Chase, Flowers, and Burrow, and it is doable. So, yeah, that should be fun. We'll get into that in a second. But I've got to ask you, man, what are you doing with these running backs for Baltimore? Keaton Mitchell, The guy's been really effective. It's nice to see, in the 2 games that he's gotten some opportunities, he's had some really big runs and touchdown runs at that. 39-yard touchdown last week. He had a 32-yard reception. The week before that, a 60-yard touchdown. But my problem, even though Harbaugh said they're going to start using him more, is they don't feature their running backs in the passing game at all. 1-2 targets max is what you're essentially looking at. And then what if they do use him more? You're still talking maybe 6 rushing attempts? That's the problem. You are banking entirely on efficiency for Keaton Mitchell. And then you want to compound the problem. It still seems like Gus Edwards is the goal line back in Baltimore.
Oh, he's definitely the goal line back. Keaton Mitchell weighs 192 pounds. 192.
Right.
He's not the goal line back under any circumstance. So yeah, he's had a couple touchdowns of late. They've been in the outside the red zone, which is wild, like hyper efficient. That's great. But I mean, in the bankable situations that you can actually project, it is not going to be Keaton Mitchell. It's going to be Gus Edwards or Lamar. Like, he's not getting the looks above Lamar either in those situations. So I think he's pretty egregiously priced. And I mean, you can go and look at his snap shares, his opportunity metrics. An increase doesn't mean he's going to be a feature back. He could still be very much a part-time player and behind Gus Edwards on par with Justice Hill and still see an increase in touches. I think he's going to be overowned given the recent play as well. So he's going to be a guy I look to come in underweight on. I'd rather play Gus Edwards. I still have a problem with this Gus Edwards price tag, though. I mean, like $7K for Gus Edwards, who's in a 3-way committee. At that point, you're basically pricing in a guaranteed touchdown, and he's very good at scoring them. So I'm not going to outright fade him. But man, this is a lofty price tag for a guy who doesn't catch passes in a 3-way committee, who's almost required to score a touchdown at this price tag. Pretty wild on Gus Edwards, too.
We're going to have the live before lock tonight. So, maybe we have more information. Maybe some things change. Maybe projections look different. But, to piggyback off everything you just said, and maybe this isn't what you were saying exactly, but I think I'm going to be underweight on running backs in general tonight.
I agree.
It's so hard for me to want to get overweight on a Joe Mixon at that price point. He's almost 10K. That is an expensive price point. And yes, Gus Edwards has been a monster inside the 5, inside the 10. You get there, you feel pretty confident that Gus Edwards can score. I'm still not ignoring the fact that you have another goal line running back in Lamar Jackson just because he hasn't gotten there recently. And Gus Edwards' volume in between the 20s hasn't been a lot. You're right. You're pricing in a touchdown there. And here's the crazy thing. For Gus Edwards to get there on a slate where you've got Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, even Tyler Boyd with no T. Higgins, Mark Andrews, all of these guys, you might need 2 touchdowns from Gus Edwards if his volume stays down.
Yeah, you absolutely might. As far as alternatives on this slate in his price range, there's a ton of them. So he's definitely a guy I'm going to come in underweight to the field on. Won't completely X him out or anything, but it's hard for me to see him outscoring these players on a price-adjusted basis.
What do you want to do with the pass catchers? I'll let you take this one wherever you think is necessary because not nearly as concentrated. Sure, Aguilar, it's not like he's getting opportunities on targets, but he's out there. Bateman's out there. Flowers is out there. Beckham's out there, scored last week. We don't really have to include Duvernay if he plays, but and then you have Mark Andrews as well, who's clearly a guy that Lamar Jackson's going to look to at a pretty significant clip. How are we prioritizing the Baltimore pass catchers today?
I think it's number 1, Zay Flowers for me. I just don't see there being a wide gap in opportunity between him and Andrews. That's been the case this season, and I think it's going to be the case moving forward. Zay Flowers is the player that gets the design stuff too. Anytime, you have a random wide receiver rush, you're running screens to wide receivers. It's Zay Flowers who's benefiting from those opportunities, not Mark Andrews. And then the other players are pretty difficult to get to. I still think Andrews is fine. Just, 1-for-1 prefer Flowers if you're picking one of the elite guys. But Beckham is seeing his routes cut severely. He's a bit overpriced, in my opinion. Bateman's a little bit cheaper than him. Bateman's been pretty locked into his receiving role. He just doesn't have a ton of targets, but I prefer Bateman to Beckham straight up. And then honestly, Nelson Aguilar is playing a ton. So for the guy at 800 who could potentially catch a long pass or give you a couple targets, really just even out your lineup, let you get the extra studs, I think he makes a lot of sense. If I'm ranking these guys price adjusted, I think it's got to be Zay 1, Andrews 2, Bateman 3, and then Nelson Aguilar 4. I would put Beckham 5.
People in chat aren't going to like that, but I get where you're coming from. You know,
He barely played last week.
I think I think Odell Beckham, because just looking at this as far as the field goes, we have him at 14% owned at utility. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in north of 20, because he's had two back-to-back touchdown games. People know the name Odell Beckham, clearly. He's scored in back-to-back spots. But you're right. He ran what, 25 routes in week 9. And then in week 10, Odell Beckham, despite scoring, he ran 12 routes last week.
Yep, he played 15 snaps.
Yeah. A lot of people aren't going to look at that, though. A lot of people are going to look at the back-to-back games with touchdowns, Matt. I'm telling you right now, dude.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I just think comparatively, like I think he's fine as a player, but when you compare him price adjusted to guys on the field more and then at different price points, I think he's probably my least favorite. And now you're telling me he's going to be somewhat owned? Yeah, that's just icing on the cake.
He should probably be around 3,000, maybe 3,500.
Agreed.
Yeah, 52 seems like a tough ask. Maybe that'll keep his ownership down. It's possible. Anybody else we want to talk about for Baltimore?
One interesting note is they basically have stopped using backup tight ends. This was a heavy 12 personnel team last year. Obviously, they have a new coach and stuff, but they invested a ton into receiver. Now, not only Odell Beckham, but 2 first-round picks in Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. They're using them like it. Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kohler. I mean, these guys were single-digit snaps, only 1 route between the 2 of them. I don't think you can play either of the backup tight ends anymore. It's solely the receivers.
It's kind of crazy to see now that you have Zay Flowers and, you know, to some extent throughout the season, Odell Beckham and them winning games by a lot of points, particularly against NFC teams. Mark Andrews' target share has really suffered a little bit. I still like him. He's still very good. He's still a threat in the end zone and in the red zone for sure. But he's definitely seen his target share come down from last season. Remember, before Lamar Jackson got hurt last year and their season went up in flames, you remember Mark Andrews is almost a 30% target share player in that offense.
Yeah, it's wild. And you said there's a lot of injuries. They've invested more in the position of late. I think they at least want options, and they have them now. So I don't think you can just bank on Mark Andrews being this bona fide target getter anymore. It's why I would straight up prefer Zay Flowers to him.
How about defenses?
Defenses, I think, are fine. I prefer the Ravens. I just think they're slightly more talented, favored in this spot. And you have Joe Burrow, who's less mobile than Lamar, so more likely to actually have pressures converted into sacks. That's where I lean, but I think both of them are fine mid-range options. I'll slightly prefer the Ravens overall. What do you think?
I'm with you. I prefer, at home, Joe Burrow's still making some mistakes. We saw, a couple bad throws last week. Also, I just think that Cincinnati's forced to air it out more than Baltimore is on any given week. So I'll take the opportunities for interceptions and pick sixes and stuff like that. Also, Cincinnati missing a pass rusher. That's significant, right? I think Baltimore preferred. I really don't hate the Baltimore defense at all, actually, tonight.
No, I don't either.
Let's take a look at the Sims, Mike. Pull it up. By the way, did we hit 100 thumbs up yet? I forgot to ask since this. 117. Appreciate you. You guys are the best. Crushed it. Got about 450 people watching. If you've forgotten to do so, still much time to atone for your sins here. From the sin bin, my friends. Take a second. All right. Let's go. Pull it up, Mike. So, by the way, the Sims tool, the contest generator, I'm not showing you because it takes really like 30 seconds, but it's generating the contest. It's trying to replicate what the field is going to look like. That's why we have that archetype slider for the for the contest generator now. And then you go to the sim and it's simulating these lineups tens of thousands of times and ranking them by the highest simmed ROI. Like I said, $1 million winner last week, 100K last week. Greg 2 weeks ago, 100K. Things are starting to fall into place. High variance sport for the NFL, no doubt about it. But it's nice to see that things are breaking the right way for a tool that, we just introduced this season. 20% off all of our Sims packages, the Sims Data or Sims Max, link in the description and chat if you want to get in on it. All right, Matt, so check this out. Let me get your thoughts here. First lineup. The first lineup that we have, the highest simmed ROI lineup that we have, is a Lamar Jackson captain lineup with McPherson, Burrow, Odell Beckham. It does have Beckham in there. Tyler Boyd and Zay Flowers. Then you have a Jamar Chase, 3 straight Jamar Chase captain lineups. So in a second, we'll look at exposures in total, but it looks like the Sims tool when ranking these isn't shying away at all from going top tier players at captain.
No, that doesn't surprise me given the value. The only thing that really surprises me is Odell over like Bateman, who's been playing more, but it's still close. I mean, I was pretty negative on Odell Beckham. You could see his routes rise at any point in time. I personally would rather have Bateman in that last spot, but overall the lineup makes a lot of sense to me, and the Jamar ones all look fantastic.
Do me a favor, Mike. Sort by dupes. Go to dupes and just sort by the highest dupes. So this one has 28 dupes, 29. There's your cash lineup, guys. Jamar Chase, Bengals, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Ravens, Trent Irwin. Still a positively simmed ROI. Go to exposures for me, Mike. Favorite 150. Make sure you favorited 150 first. You did? All right. And go to position. See where it says position down there? That right there. And go to the filter. And then CPT in there. Matt, I just want to see what our highest exposed captains are right now. All right. Look at that, dude. Lamar and Jamar are 27 and 25. Burrow 13. And then we're pretty much coming in around the field on all of these other guys.
I like that we're above the field on the studs, though. That's positive to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have the field take themselves out by playing less interesting captains. Only thing that's surprising to me, I guess, is maybe I need to go back and reconsider my heavy Tyler Boyd position.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. Hey, with the new Sims tool, though, Matt, you can manually adjust projections.
I will likely be doing that, and hopefully we have no more Dak Prescott slates the rest of the season.
Yeah. There's also ROI boosts as well, where you can boost the ROI. That's not putting guys into lineups because it's not optimizing. They're already there. What it's doing is it's taking lineups that already have those players or those stacks if you're playing another slate, and it's just boosting the simmed ROI on them and bringing them closer to the top. Greg has some amazing tutorials on YouTube. If you guys are still unsure how to use this, I would recommend watching all of them, particularly the ones with Steve Buzzard. All right, so there you go. We got exposure, some top lineups. I'll do some more deep diving into this later. Ready to build a lineup before we toss this over to the NBA strategy show?
Yeah, let's do it.
You are up at captain. Let's go. Let's play for a large field.
All right, let's use Boyd then.
All right. Should have seen that one coming.
I would have went Lamar for small.
No. Boyd's fine with me. I'm going to throw Chase in too.
All right, I will go to Lamar. We already took a cheaper captain, so this will be no problem.
I'm going Burrow. Now we got to find a way to get a little bit weird because this is clearly going to be a popular top 4 build.
But I think there's plenty of ways to do it. I'm just going to lock in Trent Irwin. He's one of the best value price-adjusted plays in the slate.
All right. So right now we have naked Lamar Jackson, which as a rushing quarterback, I don't even hate it. I mean, who do you think is the best option once we get to 3,600?
I would say either Tanner Hudson or maybe a Nelson Aguilar.
If you go Aguilar, you're leaving a lot on the table. That works. That definitely works. I don't think this is going to be a particularly chalky build. A 4-2 with Lamar's only pass catcher as Nelson Aguilar. If you're talking large field tournament where you're trying not to get duped a ton, this could be an interesting build.
Yeah, and I guess we had a lot of salary leftovers. If you wanted to, you could upgrade Irwin to Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell, a kicker, a defense. That's live as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of ways to play this. Anyway, that's a little thought experiment. We're not saying that these are top lines. We're literally going back and forth. Trust the tools, take some time, build these lineups, use the lineup generator, whatever. But as always, guys, appreciate you guys hanging out. Don't go anywhere. NBA strategy shows coming up next. Follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski on Twitter, me at Laffy_D. You see him right there underneath our names. Shout out to Mike for producing this one. As always, 20% off all of our tools right now for the Sims. Vivid Picks, $300 first match deposit bonus. Get in there. Make sure you're taking all of these bonuses to the bank. And we'll see you back here on Monday night for another Showdown strategy show. Peace.